Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of The Colors of Prog. If you don't know what this program is about by now and you're new to it, I discuss and review progressive rock recordings past and present, and some live shows and other things related to prog rock from all around the world. So, I'm going to change up the format a little bit with the next few. We're just going to jump around all over the place. So there are some things I wanted to do in more previous episodes. I just did not have time for. I try to keep these short so you don't get bored and just turn it off and go away. So first thing out of the bat, Chris Squire. This is Fish Out of Water. Chris's one and only solo album, although he did work outside of Yes with Billy Sherwood in a number of projects. This is Chris's one and only solo album, Fish Out of Water. I'm going to be talking about the esoteric Cherry Red remastering from 2018. It was done again, I understand, in 2021. I didn't get that yet, but double dip, triple dip after a while. So, as everyone should know, Chris Squire's name, and for those who don't, he was one of the founding members of Yes, 1968. And not only a fine vocalist, he had a very original style of bass playing. He was one of the key songwriters in Yes, and a constant member all the way up until his death in 2015. When post-Relayer Yes, Relayer the album, took a break in 1975, nearly every member did a solo album. Actually, every member did do a solo album. Every member at that time. Chris Squire had built a studio in his home and invited an old friend, Andrew Jackman. Pre-Yes, Chris Squire was in a band with Andrew Jackman, and they were called The Sin. S-Y-N. So Squire invited Andrew Jackman, Patrick Moraz, then a member of Yes, he played on the Relayer album, Bill Bruford, and even Mel Collins, who was most recently and even today with King Crimson, to all appear on the album and assist in creating the 5 tunes on Fish Out of Water. So what you get is Squire's fabulously trebly bass play and utilizing a large array of Rickenbacker basses and some very good, not quite Yes sounding songs. Hold Out Your Hand, You By My Side, Silently Falling, Lucky 7, and Safe, Cannon Song. There's only 5 songs on this album. But they're all well known, quite well by hardcore Yes fans. Personally, I always liked the album, but found the production attributed to Squire a bit thin. So thankfully, one of the first times people went back at this was Esoteric released an extended, which is what this is, an extended remastered version, actually in 2019. The copyright's 2018. Disc 1 contains a new stereo mix. Disc 2 contains a remaster of the original stereo mix, confusing it. And that remaster of the original stereo mix has been redistributed to over 48 tracks. Wow. It's also included singles that were released as promotion, and the 2 singles Squire did with then Yes drummer and current Yes drummer until he passed away recently, Alan White. In late 1981, they did 2 singles, Run with the Fox and Return of the Fox. Now, these songs were released at Christmas time, and it was thought by some people, they're Christmas-themed songs. Not really. These were songs that Chris Squire and Alan White, they were working with Jimmy Page on a band to be called XYZ. and it fell through for whatever reason. And but these are two of the songs that came out of that group they were working on with Jimmy Page. I don't think Page is on this stuff. Uh, didn't look hard enough for that. But anyway, so it just sounds great. And again, I said at the outset, I believe it's been done yet again. But this sounds pretty terrific. This is, I mean, for me, until I chance upon the, was it 2021, 2022 remaster of Fish Out of Water, this is quite good. Quite good. So for all you Yes fans out there, it's a win, right? Next, we go to vinyl. More esoteric, too. For you salacious people out there. This is Yuya, Uchida, and the Flowers. And the album is called Challenge. Here's the back cover. So Yuya Uchida was a Japanese musician. He was in a band that opened for the Beatles when they toured Japan in 1966. He formed the Flowers and recorded this album of heavy rock covers. And no kidding. And there are 4 covers of Janis Joplin and the Big Brother and Holding Company, including Summertime, Piece of My Heart, Songs and Cream, I'm So Glad, White Room, Hendrix, Stone Free, and Hey Joe. And there's one original song, Hidarashi no Otako. So the vocalist is someone called, I believe I found her name was, at the time, Remy. She's the female vocalist. Hiroshi Chiba was the male singer. Now, very interesting here. So, Uchida replaced all but one member of the band, except for, I believe, guitarist Hideki Ishima, and renamed them the Flower Traveling Band. So there's a bit of history in there. Eventually, members of the Flower Traveling Band would splinter off into the Far East Family Band. So there's that. So Uchida sometimes sang backup vocals, as he did with this band, as well as acted as a producer. He also was an actor. There's many credits, including a 1978 Nikatsu Pink film, Pink Hip Girl, and acted along David Bowie and Ryuichi Sakamoto and Nagishi Oshima's Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence in 1983. The man has many, many credits. Getting back to this, though, it's not bad if you know what you're going into. It's got that serious turn of the decade psychedelic blues rock thing that you will find in many late 60s albums. There's actually on YouTube a live performance of them playing in a Japanese gangster movie. So you could find that. There's also a quirky stage conversation between a supposed radio DJ and a high-voiced woman, I assume to be Remy, speaking in English and talking about this band in between some tracks. Like, hey, did you hear about this Japanese band that plays psychedelic blues rock in the style of blah, blah, blah? And the lady in a very high voice says, no, please tell me more about them. And then they cut to the song. It's very strange stuff. That's all sung in English. So it's not bad. It's a lot of fun. And if you... well, is it Prog? Not really, but it's got a connection to Prog because Flower Traveling Band, also a psychedelic blues band from Japan, also had a connection to progressive rock. This is even earlier than that. It's pretty damn rare. Oh, how's the sound? It's not too bad, surprisingly. This is on Cosmic Rock Records 2022. I know nothing about them, so take it from there. It might also be a label that was created for the release of this album. I hope to find more at some point. Next, we have Kundalini Shakti Devi. Shakti Devi. Sorry. And from all accounts, the original what was thought to be the front cover of the band's first release was intended to be like that. And I actually kept this in plastic, and I probably should have removed it to show you. This one's kind of also interesting because it was recorded in 1974 on a Revox recorder, a mixer by a group of young Italians. This band, which included a singer who also played the sax and a flute, 2 keyboardists, and 2 guitarists, and then, of course, bass and drums. They recorded a few long tracks, 3 or 4, and no record label in Italy was interested in their sound. So nearly 40 years later, AMS from Italy went back to the tapes and tried to do something with them and released it. So this is a fairly recent release, actually. And some of the amazing things about it is that progressive rock was undergoing a change in Italy at the time the band brought these tapes to the labels. And a lot of the Italian prog bands were leaning more toward a pop or disco type sound just to stay around. And I think, yeah, there was a change in progressive rock all around the world, and they just got caught up in that. So, surprisingly, given the long journey to a physical release, there's some mild occasional dropout or odd phasing in stereo, but they were certainly good enough to get a recording contract. So they also were a bit psychedelic, but there's definitely some progressive stuff going on. It actually sounded a little like Crimson in places, early King Crimson. So they had that going on. But maybe you got to remember, 1974, 75, King Crimson still was changing, ever changing. So, if you sound like Crimson then, would you sound like Crimson tomorrow? So it was a very good album, very interesting one. So next we have Kai. Very nice gatefold cover, which opens up to show a cartoon on one side for those interested, and a blurred image of a seascape. So Kai, spelled C-A-I, and there's only 4 tracks on the 4 tracks on the both sides of the vinyl. This album is called Alla de Nuestras Mentes Diminutas from 1978. Translates to Beyond the Dimension of Our Mind. Kai was a 4-piece band, bass, drums, guitar, and keyboards. Formed in Spain in 77. They disbanded in 82. Reformed in 77 to 2010. These are 4 long jam songs. Released on it was originally released on a very small label in Spain in 78. Oh yes, the Spanish. And remastered and re-released on the Swedish Tonarm label in 2015. I believe that's where this is from. So Italian bands immediately come to mind with Kai. The drummer is the singer. And although the bass player wrote most of the lyrics, Jose Velez has very expressive bass playing style. He probably sounds like he's using a Rickenbacker, that trebly sounding bass, in the style of Chris Squire, maybe in the style of Fabio Pignatelli from Goblin. Both guys have very individualistic bass playing sound. So, very interesting, Kai. I quite like them. Yes, I would say they're progressive, and they're, if you like your progressive rock and a more jam kind of style, I'd recommend this. So next we have Secret Oyster. Love this cover. There's the back cover. A quite nice release. So, I've got bloody notes all over the place on this band. So, Secret Oyster, this album is called Vidunderlige Kaelling. Translates to Wonderful Bitch. Also, the album's also known as Estate. This is originally released in '75. They were a Danish band. They originally were founded in '72, and the members came from psychedelic and jazz bands. Some of the bands were called Hurdy Gurdy and Burning Red Ivanhoe. Burning Red Ivanhoe are called by some reviewers on some progressive rock sites, rock music sites, as a sort of fusion type group. They disbanded in '77 and they reformed in 2007. Their first album, Secret Oyster, was released in '73. This was their third. Now, interesting enough, that great kind of cover, crazy. It was composed as a musical soundtrack for the avant-garde Danish ballet. They utilize all manner of keyboards, moogs, synthesizers, trumpets, saxophones, sitars. It makes quite an unusual sound. Oddly enough, the rear-grouped Secret Oyster played Nearfest, Prog Festival in 2007 in the USA. And that band featured 3 original members. So, I quite like this one. Since I had not heard much from the band, I can't compare it to other releases. And remember, this is a composed score to a ballet. But it's very easy on the ears. And if you enjoy swirling keyboards, this is for you. Now, some tracks also have a funky vibe to them, and it shakes things up. By that, because everybody's been listening to Jeff Beck lately, because Jeff Beck passed away, it definitely has a almost a Wired or Jeff Beck with Jan Hammer kind of sound. So it makes them kind of that time period. But they were a little bit more proggy with that leaning toward jazz rock, maybe, I would say. But definitely worth checking out. So this is Secret Oyster. Probably Chris Squire is obviously the choice pick of this episode. But I would say all these are really worth checking out. Secret Oyster, I would say try to find. The label is Long Hair label out of Denmark. 2019 this release is from, so you may be able to find it. Then we had Kai. And this is on Tonarm, a Swedish label. This release is from 2015. I understand it's been re-released on CD in 2021. And we also had Kundalini, Shakti, Devi. Sorry about that, yes. And of course, Yuyu, Uchida, and the Flowers. So we have 5 items this time, and Chris Squire, Fish Out of the Water. So that's our show for today, and I'll be back very shortly with more prog from all around the world. Hopefully, you got an idea what's going on and what the music sounds like. I'd say if you don't have the Chris Squire esoteric and don't have the more recent one, and I believe very much there's a more recent one, get the esoteric and the pick of the bunch here. I say Secret Oyster. And then, depending on your experimental leanings and music you listen to, maybe the Yuyu Uchida and the Flowers, because it's a challenge. Anyway, thanks for watching the show. Be back soon.